Hello and welcome to another episode of Shuffling Notes where we discuss songs, albums, artists, and all things music. I'm your co host Prankit,
I'm your co-host, Razi.
and today we're going to be talking about an Icelandic post rock band called Sigur Rós, and specifically their album known as the Bracket album or the Untitled album, or just Brackets.
Oh, the album.
Or the album. I think they also call it, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's like Svigaplatten. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but it just translates as the Bracket album.
Bracket close, bracket
Sigur
open, bracket
Rós,
close.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, basically.
yeah.
So Sigur Rós, if you're not familiar, is sort of very sort of experimental rock. Well, I guess that's post rock sort of band, and they have a very unique instrumental musical style that sort of involves like bowed guitars and something called an Ebow. And the singing as well is sort of very unique. It's sort of done in a falsetto voice, and the band itself has this language that they've titled Hopelandic. Originally, I think von Lenska is the word in Icelandic, and it's very interesting because it doesn't really have any like semantic meaning. It's just sort of it resembles Icelandic, I believe, in like the phonology, but it's very much its own thing. And this album specifically, I think all the tracks are in this sort of Hopelandic album. The band comprises of Johnsy on the vocals, guitars, keyboards, Carton, who's keyboards and guitar, George, bass guitar, keyboards, and something called a glockenspiel. It's a sort of a bell instrument, almost like a xylophone, it sounds, I think. And then Ori on drums. So I don't know if the pronunciations of the names are correct. Johnsy, I know people call him Johnsy, so I know that one's correct. But Razi, you are the one who sort of introduced me to their music. And actually, I don't think I've ever asked you, like, how did you come across this sort of almost, I want to say, like, peculiar and, like, very much niche sort of band?
Like, so my brother introduced me to this Heather. Uh, he was the one who introduced me to Untitled Six. I remember this very clearly. It was back in 2014, 15, and he asked me to like play this song called Untitled, and then I played it, and I like I was not at all in the zone of Sigur Rós music at the time. I
Yeah.
but
How long ago was this?
2014 or 15, somewhere
Oh, it's not
there.
too long. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I
Well, I say not too long, but what 2014 was like 8 years ago now. But yeah, could
but
continue.
then I played the song hesitantly. I remember
Yeah,
this incident very clearly. Like the first time I was introduced
yeah.
to it, I just he was playing my song and he asked me to change it. Hence, I was like hesitant to change it. But when
Yeah.
I played this the first time and then found like he was there with me at the time in my room, and he then I found myself listening to the song over and over on repeat, like when he wasn't there as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I thought, like, oh, let's explore, like, let's just take the whole album out because if the song's so good, the album should be
Yeah.
good too. And
Yeah.
that's when I just, then, the philosophy of with the vocals being, and um, then like them creating this language, and just like
Mm-hmm.
as I went deeper into the rabbit hole, it just went
Yeah.
like I also sort of enveloped myself across music,
Yeah.
and John
It's
C's
very much
voice.
like I think it takes you on a journey and you kind of
Yeah,
want to dive deeper and deeper into this music, especially I guess if not you if you're not used to this sort of music. And I wasn't certainly as well when I think I first heard them.
I remember I sent this album to you, and you
Mm-hmm.
downloaded the whole discography, and you just told me
Yeah,
like,
I was like
oh,
very
good.
into it. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think it was this album, right? The Bracket album, I think was probably the first one that even I got exposed to.
I think so, yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so this album is their third full length album, first released in October 2002, which was 20 years ago. And it
Use
comprises of
Flash.
eight sort of yeah. So it comprises of eight tracks, eight untitled tracks, and I guess the album in a way it's sort of divided into two parts, where like the first four tracks are a bit sort of more optimistic and lighter in tone and a bit shorter, while the last four are sort of much longer and there's sort of a melancholic quality to them. And I guess the two halves are also sort of divided by a 36-second silence in the album. And it's something I noticed when listening to this album, like back to back, but it sort of starts off with this like clicking and static noise of like a vinyl, and it also ends on that. Um, but ironically, so I looked into it, and apparently on the actual vinyl, because it's actually I think there's like four vinyls, and like each vinyl has two songs or something like that. So it doesn't end up being like that on the actual vinyl record, even though digitally they made it sound like, it starts off with like a vinyl sound, ends after four tracks, and then you play the second side, basically. Something along those lines. But yeah, so yeah, it's this. I think this album particularly is quite interesting. I know the previous album was a big hit, and I think that was the one that really brought them a bit more into the limelight.
I guess this
And
pretty soon, quite soon.
yeah, yeah, it's the one with that little sort of womb
Yeah, yeah.
baby graphic.
Fetus.
And I think John, yeah,
The fetus photo of the fetus with
yeah,
with
yeah,
the
exactly. I think you have a T-shirt of that, don't you?
rose outside.
Yeah. But yeah, and so I think John C. Spoke about this particular album, the Bracket album, and the way he put it was that this is sort of slightly like less polished than the previous album, and I think he sort of the quote I have is like it's much more bare and alive, and there are far fewer little slick things and much less sweet stuff. So it's sort of more raw music. I mean, interestingly, this album did take much longer to record than their previous album. But I think what he means is that I guess there was less thought, if there was any in the previous album, put into like how this is going to sound to an audience, perhaps, in terms of, oh, the songs need to have a positive vibe, or they need to sound uplifting. I think this album particularly is more them just sort of going at it and just creating sound, which I guess is music, right?
So I will just say this, like as I mentioned in 2014, 15 is
Yeah.
when I got introduced to six and the album, and
Yeah.
well, then I had my life incident happen, where I was medically
Yeah.
suggested to listen to white music, and I had
Like
just
white noise.
before
Yeah.
that incident, I had like just gotten into this band, and
Mm.
the who were they called? Urologists were
Yeah.
said that this is what white music is. That
Yeah.
it's calm, soothing,
This is what you need to be listening to.
melancholic music,
So
which
you can
helps
say
you
you were
construct your
prescribed Sigur Rós by the doctors.
pretty much. And then I just so since 2000 since my life incident in 2015, which
Mm-hmm.
was 7 years ago. Newsflash.
Yeah.
um, I've like I have listened to this album positively nearly every night since 2015, and
Mm-hmm.
I still do, and I still will,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. It's just a part of your life now.
it's I don't know,
Yeah.
it helps me. So I also sort of I mentally have trained
Mm-hmm.
myself to this album to be able to relax by the second or third song.
Yep.
by relax I mean if I'm to sleep, I sleep. If I'm to relax, if I'm sitting down and I listen to this album, I am like I'm just recharging myself. And by the eighth track,
Yeah.
if I'm sleeping, I will wake up. If I am like just recharging myself, then I'm recharged. Like I've like trained my mind to be able to like
Yeah, you're like
because
programmed according to the
I
album.
know the notes, the music, the rhythm, the flow,
Yeah.
and it's like you just like just flowing in it. Yeah,
Go with the flow. Yeah.
and it's been it's so again I have done my research back in those days in those years, but I didn't do specific research for this episode. But I've got like my insights.
But
Uh,
you know by heart
yeah,
by this
like
point all the
I'm
tracks.
just
Yeah.
as we go through it,
Yeah.
but I'm actually interested to know another perspective because sure I've heard this.
Yeah. I don't think we've spoken about Sigur Rós that much, even though we listen to it a
We
lot.
have listened to it and
Um,
we have
with each other,
enjoyed
I
it,
think we haven't
but
discussed
we haven't. No, we haven't spoken like discussed cigarettes.
because it is the sort of music that I think you just sit down and you listen and you absorb it rather than like talk
True.
about it. You know, it is that sort of it's the white
Yeah.
noise. So it'll be an interesting one. But yeah, I did do some research, and particularly I was looking into also like how or why they're all like called
Okay.
untitled or why are all the
But
tracks
they are
untitled.
titled,
And I
right?
found this
The
quote
like the
from
first track is called
there's
Vaka,
unofficial
and then
names.
there's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
Savalon, and
getting
okay,
getting ahead of it, Razi. Yeah, we'll go through it one by one. But yeah, so I found a quote by the sort of the guitarist or keyboardist is like Carton or Charton. I'm not sure how his name is pronounced. But the quote I have is like he said we didn't want to put titles on the record just because there are supposed to be titles on the record. And that really is the quote I have. So I guess it was again one of those things where if you go back to what I was saying about this album
yeah,
sounding more raw, again they didn't want to put thought into well it has to sound like this or people need to have tracks need to have titles, and they kind of just did their thing. Interestingly, like when you buy the album, it comes with like a booklet with like 12 blank
I
pages,
have that.
where you're supposed to sort of I guess create
Well,
your own
actually, you have that.
interpretations
It'll be there in
and
the
draw.
house somewhere. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you left it here. Yeah. Okay. I should have
That
brought it
that was
up here as a
actually
case.
a special gift to me. Just because I
I
was like
remember.
crazy about the album, and I had just
Yeah.
started being crazy
Yeah.
about the album. Yeah, yeah. That's one CD that's never gonna go away, even though it's a CD.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
ingrained into you. And I guess one other thing to mention is this is the first album to actually feature Ori as the
So
drummer. I think he replaced the previous drummer, whose name I'm not even going to try and pronounce. Um, so yeah, I unless you have anything to add, we can just sort of jump into it track by track.
there's one like one fun fact I know is that the drummer,
Yeah.
I don't know if this one or the older one, was
Hmm.
basically told to just, you know, like he doesn't know how to drum. He was just told to like,
Oh, interesting.
feel the rhythm and do it. So like that's how
Interesting.
they and that's how they have this very
Yeah.
unusual beats to their songs in this album
Hmm.
as well as others. Like it's a I mean, it's
Hmm.
rhythmic, sure, it's got a pattern to it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the general rock or as the band is post rock
Yeah.
music
Yeah. Yeah.
drum beat that you have.
Yeah.
Like that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rhythms are quite unique, I think. Excellent. So yeah, let's
Mhm.
just dive into it. So the first track is called Untitled.
One.
But the nickname of the track is Vaka, which is the name of Ori's
Mhm.
daughter. And yeah, this track also has a music video. I don't know if you've seen that. There's like a very eerie music video I found, which is basically like it starts off and they're like school kids leaving the school, and then when they leave the school, outside it's like this post-apocalyptic world, and they're wearing gas masks, and it's like red
Yeah,
skies
I
and ash falling. It's a very
haven't.
eerie
I
video,
think I mean, if I watched the video, I might have. Yeah,
like a while
but
back.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Um,
Yeah. Mhm.
but yeah, I guess as we mentioned before, right, the track starts off with that sort of static sound and distortion of like a vinyl track playing. But I mean, right off, I guess the intro is like such a trip. You've got all those like background sounds that to me they almost sound like, like a kettle boiling, like the ones that with the whistle. Um, and you got all that sort of ambient music and sounds like building up into music, like sound converting into music as it starts. But to me, like it just immediately sort of traps you into like this is gonna be a different
The
type of
chords are
journey,
so
right?
like I don't know, like the pace of the chords is so
Yeah,
correctly done. The like as it begins, and then
yeah,
like the whole first track. It's a long track as well. I think
yeah.
8 minutes, 9 minutes.
It's about
Yeah,
6.5 minutes, but fairly
yeah,
long going by
and
like standard track lengths.
like it starts off with this. Like there's a journey, as I'm explaining. Like I've done that journey
Yeah,
a lot of times.
yeah,
um, so it starts off with this,
mm-hmm.
setting up stage with the piano chords. That's how the song starts, and
Mm-hmm.
then those chords, like
Yep,
from 225 onwards, like that's where
yeah.
vocals act as the instrument,
Come in.
is what they try as well. Like
Yeah,
like adding the vocals as part
mm-hmm.
of the instrument, and then towards the end of 4 minutes, or like the beginning of five, there's like the music sort of grows further. Like these are the stages that it's
Mm-hmm.
going through, and then
Yeah.
then at this adds, like, I think there's piano, there's vocals, there's uh I think a little bit of violin
I think that's the so it's interesting because they use this guitar
with
technique
the
as well, where they
bow.
have
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
Ebow. Yeah, but it's like an
yeah,
electric
yeah.
like device that you just
John
kind of
C plays
hold on
it
the string and
quite
it just
often in the
sustains
concerts.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I think it might be that as well. It's difficult to tell apart the sound sometimes. And when they play it live, they like it's, for some of the tracks, and not this one, but some of the other ones. I tried to watch the live version to try and see how they create the sound, but then they always slightly change it in the live version depending what instruments they have at hand. So it's like I can't say that, oh, this is how they did it on the album because
Even
that's how they're doing
even
it
the
live, because they
even the
do
live
change it
concert
up.
that we went for, John C was like
Yeah,
he
the
was making the
soundscapes.
music, like he was adding, editing, and
Yeah,
adding his sounds as the background echoes and stuff, like on
yeah,
stage, and while the
yeah.
band was doing its purpose on stage. Yeah, like
Their own. Yeah.
but
Oh, one of the things in this track is like I think when I first heard it, and maybe a few times after that, I didn't know what language it's in or anything. So to me, I always like heard words, English words
okay.
in this track, and particularly "You sat along the fire, you saw the lion." I don't know why, I just hear that, like like sat
It
along
does
the
sound like
fire,
that, yeah.
you saw
So
but yeah, it's just I thought it was a little
but
fun fact.
but like the graphs of the
um,
whole track is, if you look at it as a, like a
yeah,
cinematic journey, maybe. So the graph goes like
yeah,
starting from the piano, adding adding another instrument, adding more
hmm,
layers of instruments and like
yeah,
harmonies, and like a
yeah,
ambience sort of feeling. And
hmm,
then it goes back to
yeah,
the piano chords where it ends and goes into the
yeah,
next track. Like,
yeah,
that's how it sort of
yeah.
plays out.
It's sort of like a
Yeah.
build up, and I think it's not necessarily like a build up to a
Yeah.
loud climax, but it's
Yeah.
like a journey, and then it ends just like
Optimistic
it's
as well.
another interesting thing is like this
Optimistic. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and this track. So the notes of a lot of these tracks I made before knowing like the nickname of the track, or like Vaka in this case. But to me, like whenever I heard this track, so a lot of the other Sigur Rós tracks, they always sort of, to me, when I close my eyes or when I'm listening, they remind me of landscapes or some places that I've visited or been to, or some journey that I
Iceland
was
is a
on, like
beautiful
specific
place,
ones.
so
But
that's where the
this
inspiration
track,
comes from.
yeah, but this particular track, whenever I heard it, this, for some reason, it didn't evoke that feeling of
Yeah.
a landscape, but this evoked more of a memory of a person. And no particular person, almost you could call it like a made up
Mm.
fictional memory. But whenever I hear it, it's almost like you're remembering something from a different life. Like there's a quality to it, to me, that rather than a landscape or some sort of that sort of visual um, reaction, I get more of like as if like you're trying to remember or recall something from your childhood, or like like that type of innocence to the sound.
Nostalgia, reverie kind of feeling. Like, like you sort of go in a
Yeah,
reverie.
and that's why I was so yeah, and that's why when I learned that it's called Vaka, which is the name of
Hmm.
Uri's daughter, I was like, that actually kind of is like how I was imagining it, like that childhood memory or memory of a kid or like a childhood friend that you had that you don't even remember anymore, but then you have a dream, and that's the other thing. It's like waking up from a dream. The sound, it's like you wake up to the sound of that, what I call
Yeah,
kettle boiling, and it just evokes like you had a dream of someone you forgot about. Is the feeling I get. It's very, very
it
unique.
is. And I mean, okay, we'll discuss. Like, I have more points which sort of
Yeah.
uh, are spoken for all the tracks, but they're
Hmm.
like sort of highlighted
I
in.
see. So more in like the
No,
conclusion
they're like
part.
highlighted in
Yeah.
a few other tracks. So like I'll talk about it
Okay.
then. Yep.
Save it for then. Speaking of the tracks, the second track is called Untitled. The nickname is Firsta, not sure how you pronounce it, but it means first. And I think this also sort of starts off with, I'm going to call it kettle boiling sounds. However, this one is sort of accompanied by like this strange distortion at the beginning.
Like you're tuning
So
into the
the
radio,
intro of
kind
this
of.
track, yeah. So, but it sounds very similar to the intro of
Hmm.
the previous track, but more like ominous to
Yeah,
me.
maybe.
Like there's like a
Yeah.
strange, yeah, there's like a strange
Yeah.
presence in there
Right.
in the beginning, which I think not disturbing, but it does give you a completely different feeling. Like you don't feel like you woke up from a
Yeah.
dream, for example. It gives me a very different vibe, um, in general, right? But I'd say like this track compared to the previous one, you do start to see like a semblance of what like a track is generally like. Like you've got some
Got
rhythm, right?
so
Some
drums is
drums. You
when
have
this,
like a
yeah,
bit of
drums are
guitaring,
introduced in this one. And yeah, it's
right?
sort of like,
Yeah. And you got like the guitaring playing and the falsetto singing, but it sounds more like what a song
yeah,
would sound, and not just ambient
yeah,
noises,
it's
right?
got a beat to it as well as the rhythm. So as I've
Yeah.
noted down, it's like it tunes you into this melodious beginning, which
Hmm.
now has introduction of beats, and then there's like a sound of an instrument softly coming, and
Yeah.
that sound is the
Hmm.
vocals I'm talking about. Like they like softly come into it, and then
Yeah.
they they're trying
The
to tell you
falsetto
something,
pitch. Yeah.
maybe something like keep strong and keep
Yeah.
holding on, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
like the like the guitar softens in between, and like this there's like
Yeah.
this chemical mix of instruments that they use
Yeah.
like in different manners,
Mhm.
I would say. Like,
Yeah, I mean the guitaring in this one specifically is very interesting to me because it's like it's very simplistic in the sense of like you've got these notes
mhm,
repeating almost from a chord, but it's not like it misses out some notes, and like if you're not listening very carefully, I feel like your brain
fills it
almost
in.
like
Yeah,
plugs in those notes by itself. Yeah, it's like when you see a picture and there's something missing but your
I think
brain fills it in. They do that with the guitar, and if you're paying attention to it, you're like, wait, this doesn't sound like the song. This sounds like they're only playing half the notes. but it's because you don't realize they're actually missing notes out in between. It's difficult to explain,
Okay.
but it's like if you pay attention consciously to that
Interesting. Yeah.
guitar riff or those notes being repeated over and over, it's the same pattern, but your brain, I think, fills that pattern out a bit more when it's hearing
Yeah.
these other sounds. And I think this track, in that sense, is one of the, for me on this album, I think it's like, you could say the simplest, but I think a better word would be like the most like subtle song on the album. Like some of the things are very subtle, like these notes being missing, and it's the same sort of rhythm looping over and over, right? It's building up, but it's looping, and it's simple and subtle, but it's interesting, like the way they've put it together. Complexity and simplicity.
True. Yeah, that's quite
Right.
interestingly. Like again, that's a new perspective that I was also looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've enjoyed the album over and over, but I
Yeah.
wanted to,
Yeah.
know
Well, I'm glad I could bring something to the table, Razi.
just doing your bit.
Also it's crazy to think like these tracks, like especially these two and this one. It's like it's not like you're listening to a standard track where you have like a verse and a chorus and a bridge. Like you don't really have that type of song structure. It's just a journey. It's music but without the traditional structure.
Eh, I mean, it's um the uh, how do I explain it? It's like the ambience, the sounds are so like much an ambience.
Yeah.
Like they sort of as you progress into the song, they sort of get to
Yeah.
both your ears. If like, for example, listening on headphones,
Yeah.
you'll be like completely surrounded in the
Yeah.
middle of the track, maybe at the end of the track, and
Mm-hmm.
like, and then they leave you in this
Mm-hmm.
complete sudden sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
unexpected turn. And
Yeah.
or in the case of this album, they sort of transition into the right into the next song,
Mm-hmm.
like at least for the first songs and then the first song. Yeah.
The next track is titled Untitled. And unofficially called Samskati, which means sort of seam or joint. Another translation I found was like attachment, which I feel like might make more sense. And I think this track starts off quite a bit differently than the first two. It's almost like you're hearing like this organ playing, and there is some static and ambient sort of distortion almost with it. But it does start differently, and then you get that beautiful piano riff. Like it's just that is all you need. That piano
Yeah.
riff. It's just so unique and yeah, just
So
amazing,
like
right?
as I've perceived it is it
Yeah.
starts off with an organ sound, which goes on for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Yeah.
exactly then there's like a huge array of thoughts,
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
thoughts that you can look back to and cherish, which you were just also mentioning
Mm-hmm.
for the second song.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tune,
For the first
well,
song,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
but like the
Yeah.
theme is followed through, or I saw it like the tune taking you
Yeah.
forward and backward with the those the, this
Yeah.
it's like the chords are playing with themselves, like running after
Yeah.
each other, and it just keeps on
Oh,
going
yeah,
higher
the
and
notes,
higher.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very playful. That's a good way to put
and
it. Yeah.
and I think after like a minute after the minute is when the song intensifies further and further with adding violins, and
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
3:30 it adds violins, and then like there's there's this at the end of the song, which where the notes are ending, it's like
Yeah.
the notes aren't ending. It's like running out of fuel because they're playing it to the end of
Mm-hmm.
the song, to the last second of the song. Like the
Yeah.
notes are like going softer,
Yeah. It's like they're getting
softer and
tired
softer,
almost.
but like
Yeah.
they're still going
Yeah.
on. Like so, I could just relate it, or could like compare it to having thoughts. Like
Mm-hmm.
it helps balance my
Yeah.
thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
the music is so uh, again, like it's not a regular chord progression. Like there is no progression. It's the same chords over and over.
No, it's very so. Yeah, the only progression you could call it, or like there's this interesting thing, right? Where firstly, I think like on the right channel, like especially in the beginning, the first half of the song, there's like it almost
Mhm.
sounds like a voice, but it's I think it's like again that Ebow guitar thing or violin or there's some sort of electronic music playing. But then on the left side, there's also like there's like these um, again it's like the ebow on the guitar. It's like playing these rhythms, and if you notice like towards the middle section or like the second half of the song, there's the loud music, right? It almost sounds like horns or like some brass instrument playing, right? But it's actually or like bagpipes. It almost sounds like bagpipes, but it's the electric guitar with the ebow. And if you listen carefully, it's I think it's the same sound that plays from before. It's just slowly getting louder and louder and louder until it becomes so loud it almost sounds like the bagpipes, like the that loud electronic and electric part of the song. And that build up is very unique because you don't notice it when you're listening. You just think like, oh, where did this
Yeah,
instrument come from, or where did this sound come from? But it's been playing all along, it's just very low volume, so you hardly hear it, and then it just builds up, and that's almost like I want to say like the climax or that main sort of part of the song, which is sort of loud. And then there's also this I think I don't know how to pronounce it, glockenspiel or whatever. It's like a bell instrument that I think plays along, like specifically at like the 5 minute 23 second mark. It's very light, but it sort of accompanies the piano notes a little bit, and it again produces this very interesting sound. I've got to say this track may be my favorite track off the album. It's just to me, I could just listen to this track. I mean, all the tracks on repeat, but this one particularly, it just takes me, transports me to like completely different world.
which is optimistic and positive, and I don't know. Like, yeah,
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 there's an uplifting aspect to it. Like
uplifting.
even if you're sad and you're listening to this, it's not like music that forces you to happy, but it's like when you yeah, and going back to your thing about thoughts as well, but it's like when you remember a bad memory, but you remembering it through like nostalgia, so you're not there's like a warmth to that memory, even though it might not have been a very
Yeah,
happy memory at that time. It's
makes
sort
sense.
of
Yeah.
like this track where it brings
Hmm.
that warmth, right?
Makes sense. This track is something like it it plays the notes till the last second, and just like transitioning into the next track, like basically say the
Yeah,
wavelength graph is like that, and it's coming like that, and that's where the notes are getting softer, and like
yeah,
they're getting also like uh,
mm-hmm.
like segregating the sounds, like it's only the piano now at the end of it, and just at the last chord,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you sort of
It's
like
stripped back.
boom into this grand
Yeah,
opening of the next song.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Very very nicely put. And this takes us to the next song, which is called Untitled, and unofficially Najos Navelin. I think it translates to the spy machine, and it's also known as the Nothing Song. So this track directly starts off with like your percussion or rhythm drums. So again, sort of unique way to start it off. But I think it does go through like a few different transitions, right? In terms of
Music,
like
yeah.
the music and
Very much,
sound.
very much.
Yeah.
It's quite grand in its
And
way,
I think
like
this, yeah,
with the way they've treated the instruments in this song is like that.
hmm
Like a probably something like a Hans Zimmer
yeah.
music or
That's
something.
that's something that's what I've written as well. That this track feels grander than like the previous three. Is like exactly what I've written down. But yeah, it does have that like grand, almost like an
Yeah,
orchestra feeling to it, where you feel like it's a
yeah.
big, I guess, collaboration. And there's like this faint voice that you can hear in the beginning, like again in one of the ears. It's like and it could be like just some electronic sound, but it's like a voice singing, and again I think it just adds to that like ambience and this sort of otherworldliness um, that this song creates. And I think the grand feeling as well, like even with the guitar, with all the sustain that they use, it makes you feel like you're in like a large hall, like surrounded by guitars. The electric
Yeah.
guitar part, I mean. But it's like just the ebow and the sustain, and it just gives it that feeling of like you're in a massive concert hall.
Have you seen the movie Spirit of the Spirit? I think it's called Spirit of the Stallion.
I think it's like Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, like something.
Cimarron
I
is
have seen it
Cimarron is
a
the
while
name of
back.
the stallion. Yeah.
Stallion of the
Yeah, but
Stallion of the Cimarron. It's the one with the
yes,
Brian Adams and
here I am.
was it Hans Zimmer and Brian Adams?
Here I am. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Hans Zimmer and Brian Adams.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
like this song, the opening of the song gave me like a feeling of
Mm-hmm.
that visual of the horses, like the animated visuals that they've shown in the movie with like the slow
Yeah,
motion
yeah.
horses, and it so also the
We like the rhythm, the
and also
drums,
like the
right?
song carries the same vibe as the movie, which is uplifting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yeah,
it's about
yeah,
empowerment,
mm-hmm.
and that's what the song
Yeah,
also helps achieve, I think.
yeah,
And like there's
yeah,
like a
yeah.
there's also this like musical gap which also acts like a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's music, it's not an interlude really, because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like a bridge to this
I don't think it's like
song.
a normal song structure anyway. It's just they got places where it just transitions. So like at the 3 minute
Yeah.
mark, I think it's almost like I want to say it's that glockenspiel, that bell instrument, or it could be like an electric piano sound that like kicks in, and it's got a lot of echo. It almost sounds like an organ
Yeah.
bells or something. It's
Yeah.
very heavy, and the song also transitions in terms of like the words that are being
Yeah.
spoken. Um, and that background voice I was talking about, it sort of comes in a little louder at this point, but it does go through them. Like the 5 minute mark as well, you've got that xylophone slash bell
Yeah.
sound, um, doing like almost like a solo, right? It's like a musical solo. That I think that's the interlude part you might be talking about,
Maybe.
where you've just got that little instrument riffing on its
And
own.
um I don't know, like it's a I'm not sure what instrument is playing at that mark, but there's that bridge, and then like you jump back to that grand music back
Yeah,
again, and like
yeah,
then like the guitar chords sort of follow the same theme of the music that's set up
yeah,
from
yeah,
the first track of the with the piano, while the
yeah,
guitar chords
yeah,
are doing it now instead of the piano, and
yeah.
like it's sort of
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
like
overlap
the
in that musical sense, right?
covering its tracks, and then sort of
Mm-hmm.
the song also like uh, the ending of it, like it
Yeah,
leaves you with an impression which also stays with you silently for the next 30
mm-hmm.
seconds, where where the
Yeah.
fourth track is ending is the 30 seconds.
That
So
that 36-second
yeah,
silence that's there at the end of the track, right?
I think it's 30
Yeah.
seconds
No, I think it's
in
amazing. I think
4 and 6 seconds in 5, something like that.
in the
Yeah.
other one, yeah, it's 30 seconds in Untitled and then 6 seconds in Untitled.
So there's also this this rawness in Untitled that basically is that you hear the breath of the vocalist, even though it's being
Mm-hmm.
treated as an instrument, but hearing the
Yeah,
breath of it so clearly is what I'm saying. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
you can hear John C breathing, and or like taking a breath.
yeah. It's like part of the music and the
Exactly, but
ambience it's creating.
that
Yeah,
production being so raw sort of adds to their
yeah,
philosophy of
mm-hmm.
creating music without words. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So it just sort of
yeah.
adds
The
another
sounds.
layer of
Yeah.
philosophy to it,
Mm.
probably.
But yeah, I think, and this track particularly to me, there's even more so than the first couple tracks. Again, I want to use the word innocence, and I think it's because of that sort of that xylophone sounding bell instrument, which gives it that lullaby feeling. That it's very yeah. I mean, the themes in this album without any words, like a lot of the themes, to me they feel like it's almost like about
Yeah,
childhood memory and places you've been to as a kid, like journeys, landscapes you saw
yeah,
as a child. And this song again brings that out, like places you've been as a child, things you've
true.
seen. But I have no idea what the name
Mm.
is about in the not the untitled, but the unofficial name. But that's true for most
I
of
mean,
these tracks.
he sings this name, right? No, Nasa.
I'm guessing, unless he's singing something else. I mean, I was hearing English in the first track, so all right. So yeah, I guess so. Before we transition to the next track, let's all have a 36-second of silence. And yes, and then we get to the fifth track of the album called Untitled, and unofficially titled Alafos, which is the location of the band's studio. So with this track, we begin the second half of the album, which is comprised of tracks much longer. Like this one is almost 10 minutes, and a little slower.
Slower, actually.
A bit more mellow. You could even say like
Won't you say
melancholic.
the beginning of the
Um,
song, how it starts, isn't that
mhm.
like a more like a slower pace of the tune that we were following in the first track, I think.
I think there's a lot of similarities to that, where it's almost like there's elements of previous tracks slowed down or extended over a
Yeah.
longer period, right? Um, it's yeah, I think it is along similar riffs, but I think what that to me, at least in this track, um, this part, and especially like in the beginning only, but like around like the 2 minute mark where you start getting that falsetto singing, it's very like trance like, because there's also like that almost like slide guitar or Evo, like that playing along with the falsetto singing, like it's mirroring
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
um
kind of.
and it's again, it just creates like this trance like vibe that I just, it's like the tempo of the song is so slow that you don't even notice the percussion and like the drums in the background. It's like they just sound like sounds, even though they are actually
Yeah.
following a rhythm. But there's like such a big gap between
They've
like
like
two
sort
drum
of
beats that,
stretched the sounds out, like stretching it out for a longer while
yeah,
than they
yeah,
actually should be
it's
for it to be a beat. But like that
yeah,
drum
exactly. So it's
just going
almost
like
like,
that and staying, and then another one and
and then
staying. That those stays are
yeah,
very I think
yeah,
unique. I think, but
yeah.
this-
I feel like it's like I almost feel like it's harder to play drums that slow than it is to play them fast, because like keeping that rhythm in your head, and it's so slow and not drifting off somewhere, it must be a challenge in
true.
itself.
But I think like
um
the for
yeah,
me like
but
this sort of this track which starts the second section,
mm,
it compared to the first one, which sort of faded in with its instruments, this sort of
yeah,
slides into the picture with
yeah,
kind of, I mean, all the instruments are sort of sliding themselves into the picture, as you
Yeah.
you know as they
Yeah. Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
singing and playing the drums and the
Mm-hmm.
guitar and also the bow thing, the guitar and bow. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ebow.
Ebow. um, yeah, this track for some reason it really reminds me of Snowdonia, like,
We've
but
heard
also
this
I
in
guess just like
Snowdonia.
like the purity of like probably that's why, but it sort of reminds me of it's like the like the
Uh-huh.
mountain tops and like that sort of purity you get like at mountains and
Yeah,
waterfalls. Um, it's very again it's very much evokes imagery of nature um,
I
and
mean,
sort of
sort of all
isolated
their
parts of
songs do,
nature.
because I mean, Iceland
Yeah.
being, as I've seen, like the marketing, and well, not been
Mm.
there yet, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a beautiful
Yeah.
country, and I
Hmm.
think the inspiration, like you
That
sort
is the
of see the
muse.
inspiration. yeah, the muse. The
Hmm.
muse is the country. The muse is the
Yeah.
landscapes around you, and these guys, like you've seen,
Hmm.
if you see their concerts in Iceland, like it's they've just set up stage in a
Hmm.
park and they're just playing, like that's the
Yeah.
band, that's the
Yeah.
love for music that they have, that they want to just do it somewhere, and
Yeah.
the nature is just
Yeah.
driving the music, the ambience of the place.
Yeah. Also interestingly, like looking at the background behind you, like the elements of the song remind me of like Pink Floyd, like especially like at the 5 minute mark, and then also then again at
Right.
like the 8 minute mark, where you've got the loud organs and you've got like the slow drum rhythm like going on with that music. To me, like I find like when I'm listening to those parts, to me it just really reminds me of some like the Pink Floyd type music where you have the loud sounds but you got a really slow like tempo, like the drum beat that's going with those sounds. Um, so like the ending of the track as well. It's a lot of it to me. It's like it just reminds me of that type
You
of
say
sound.
around 8 minutes to do.
Yeah, 5 minute and then around the 8 minute where again you get the loud organs
Yeah,
coming
because
in.
I've written down like around 8 minutes we go into the
Mm-hmm.
whole rock aspect of this experiment. Like I would call this album like an
Mm-hmm.
experiment of the band, which for me is quite
Yeah,
successful. And
yeah,
like
yeah.
the the whole fifth track is very powerful as compared to how
Mm-hmm.
uplifting the previous four tracks were. This is more powerful. It's more
Yeah,
like a feeling of empowerment. Like it gives you that
yeah,
with the way
yeah.
the yeah.
Then
It's
just
not
being
just it's not
uplifting or
just about
positive.
positive.
Yeah,
It's about like pushing you through it, kind of.
yeah.
And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was.
And yeah, so now we get to the sixth track of the album called Untitled and unofficially called Ebow, because this is one of the tracks where George uses Ebow on his bass. So this is another long track, sort of 8 to 9 minutes, and it starts off with that like percussive instrument, the rhythm, drums, and I think the drums to me, like the rhythm it follows, it has a lot more structure than I want to say like the previous track, but it almost sounds like more tribal. Like there's like this, the way it kicks. It's
I
just got a
think
very
the
different feeling to
the
it
yeah,
from the
like the
other
base
tracks.
layer of this track is um like like that's the bass layer, the beats, the drums. On that is like you
Hmm.
sort of keep adding elements, instruments, and um, like the song also is quite intense. The song also gets quite intense
Yeah.
by the end of it, and
Layering it on top of the rhythm.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, to that, I think there's like the beginning part of the song. It's like there's a lot of build up, right? There's a lot of sustain, and it's the first couple of minutes they sort of
yeah.
build up with all the sustain and the rhythm, and it sort of leads you to that 3 minute 34 second mark, which is I think and it opens up, and again a lot of sustain, right? Like in the sound, it sort of holds on. And I think to your point, after that part, again, there's build up, leading you
Yeah.
to like the 6 minute 42 second mark, where again like it ramps up. There's like energy
Yeah.
pumped into the track, like like distortion in the background, again giving it that like rock feeling with sustain.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is how a rock song ends, because generally
Mm-hmm.
so with some rock songs they end and you have the feedback and the sustain of like the guitar chord being held, but that is the track, like that is the music of the track, just like that
Right.
electric sound with a bit of feedback and just holding on to it rather than playing a rhythm.
Like it, now that you're using the term sustain, is when I can sort of understand the rock sensation, and the sustain is sort of what carries through the build up in the song. And there's like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, there you explore a lot more of the like more falsettos and more of their language, this created language in this song, as compared to the
The
previous songs,
Hopelandic,
because they
yeah.
sort of carried like similar sounding invented words, while this has like something
Yeah,
more drastic,
there's like a
maybe
lot
dramatic.
more,
Yeah.
yeah, diversity of sounds.
And this is actually a little more dramatic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This track. Yeah, I think I agree. Like, I think with that part of like the falsetto singing and also the other instruments, like especially at the 6 minute 42 second mark, from there on, like the drum beat
Yeah.
transitions to like a proper, like a drum beat, and there's more
Yeah.
opportunity for it to open up, even though it's with the like long sustained guitar sounds and ambient noises. But there's more opportunity for some of the
True.
music to open up in this
And then
song.
like that ending with that feedback amp sound, giving the rock band feeling. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, with the sustain, it's almost like the note like
Yeah.
getting corrupted, because
Yeah.
it's like it holds on, and then the distortion just starts, taking over
True.
the sound
True.
of the note. Yeah, it's very sort of interesting. Um, and yeah, and then from here we get to the longest track on the album, coming in at 13 minutes. Um, so this
Mm-hmm.
track is titled Untitled and unofficially titled Dauðalagi. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but it translates to Death Song.
Mm.
So yeah, this track, I think it picks up with sort of the ambient sounds. It almost feels like it picks up off where the previous track ended,
Mm-hmm.
like in that same vein,
Mm-hmm.
like the beginning of the song. Um, and I think again because the rhythm is unique as well, and specifically in this track, I think there's like, and I guess it's true for some other tracks as well, but you could say there's so much space, like between the different musical notes and between the drum beats, like the track gives you that emptiness in between, like you get to appreciate what you just heard, because there's like a little bit of a pause until you hear something next. It's not just like music
Yeah.
after music, note after note. It's very spaced
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
in that
True.
13 minutes, right?
It's this track is like very majorly soft in its tone and its tune of instruments, and um like even the
Yeah.
vocal sounds are like uh, those, or like the vocal sounds, I won't say words, like those, not not
Yeah.
too aggressive, like they're
Hmm.
soft in their tune of
Yeah.
it, and the way the falsetto just flows through it.
Yeah.
And I mean the whole song, the whole
Yeah.
13 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, this track as well. Yeah, and I was just gonna say to that vocal part as well. Again, this track I feel
Mm-hmm.
like is more vocal based. Like there is more like, I guess the singing is not just
Mm.
one of the sort of sounds. It's one of the major sounds, which like the song, other
Yeah.
instruments almost wrap around. More so in this song, um, than I think some of the other tracks. Like when you get to like again, I think it's about that 6 minute 42 second mark on this song as well. It ramps up, and like there's a lot of like pain in that
Yeah.
like singing. it's like loud, and there's like at the 7 minute 6 second mark, there's like this loud
Yeah.
like horn sound in the background, almost like a ship or like a train, and accompanying, and the music as well, like it accompanies the vocals in a way that it's
Hmm.
like, how you have harmony when like you have two people or multiple people singing, but here you got that one voice, but you've got
Yeah.
the musical harmony along it, like especially around like the 8 minute 50 second mark. And it's weird because I think the musical part, to me, it makes it sound like sinister, like there's like a scariness, like it's a
Even that
deep,
ship
it's
sound
some
that
of the
you
deep sounds, but
also has
it's
like different like different uh, 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 notes to it. Like it goes notes higher, and so I think they probably are doing it like on a synthesizer or
yeah,
something, but those notes go
yeah,
high. Yeah.
yeah, oh, however they're creating it. Yeah, but it just to me, like, oh, this music really is like
Hmm.
accompanies the singing. Like the singing is there, and the music accompanies it, like it's following it. But it's like a
Hmm.
companion to the singing, but it's got this darker twist to it. It's like lower octave, and it's like deeper sounding. And in the singing, like the way he sings this part, there's like a
Yeah.
longing, like a sense of missing, or like
True.
longing for
There's
something, or
pain,
desiring,
pain
right?
as well.
So
Yeah.
that's why I feel
Yeah.
this song has a bit more pain. Yeah, it's like reaching out, and as he's reaching out, the music
Yeah.
is giving that like deep accompaniment, like that dark, with that horn sound and some of the other
Yeah.
sounds as well, like throughout the 13 minutes. It's very
I think you
interestingly
sort of
layered,
flow through
right?
the 13 minutes, and even so, I
Yeah.
think as the instruments have sort of highlighted themselves in the songs, is
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
how the tracks have also ended. I don't know if that's actually
Hmm.
factually true or not, but for example, like this has
It's an
like
interesting
as you say, like
observation. Yeah.
majorly vocals, so it ends with that vocal sort of running
Yeah.
out, while the third one was majorly piano and the piano was running out, and sixth one was like
Yeah.
electric rock guitar, and that also sort of corrupted out,
Yeah, and
like
you had
yeah.
that sound sort of, yeah, yeah. That's an interesting yeah, because I think this track, so at like the 10 minute 37 second mark, it sort of starts to reach its climax. Like the rhythm
Hmm.
sort of evolves of the drums, and like again, it's not something you hear generally, but it's a very unique rhythm. And I think, what to the point, like with the singing, right towards the end as well, there's like, along with the singing, there's like this ominous
Yeah.
presence
Yeah.
of the music, which is like, it's like a just dark presence. The way that the
True.
music comes to me in this song is just, again, it sounds very unique. It's not like an uplifting song. It's not even, I feel like, that powerful feeling that
Yeah.
you get from some of the previous tracks
Hmm.
in the second part of the album. But it's
Yeah.
it's different. It's yeah, there's it's not disturbing either, but it's got a strange vibe
That's
about it.
why
It's
that's
difficult
why
to put a
these,
finger on it.
specifically the sixth, seventh, or eighth tracks wake me up,
Yeah.
because
Ah,
it's
interesting.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
That
in
it's
that,
it's
I'm
very,
not
yeah,
comfortable. I like the music. I
yeah.
like how it's
Mm-hmm.
being done, but it
Yeah,
if you if you're sort of,
yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to it passing by, you're gonna enjoy it. But if you're listening to it concentrating, maybe meditating, like it
It's
gets
less
heavy on
of,
you.
yeah. It's less of white music.
I
Yeah,
think the
it's less
first
white
four
music. It's
songs
in the sense
are
of like, it's
white
not
music,
passive.
and the next four
Yeah,
songs are more in towards,
yeah,
like inclined towards the rock side of the band. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's
Hmm.
elements of that sort of thing, right? The
Yeah.
instruments as well being louder and less in harmony sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, yeah, and then we get to the last track, also titled, surprise, surprise, Untitled, and unofficially titled Pop Plagio, which translates to pop song. Yes, I found out. Oh. So this track, now again, I want to point out, I made the notes before knowing necessarily what the unofficial names of the tracks translate to. But like one of the things I noticed in this track, like straight off from that introductory guitar riff, um, this song sounds much more like a traditional pop rock song compared to the rest of the album. Like the structure and like whatever he's singing, like if you replace it with actual English words or any language, but like words with meaning, it would sound
Song.
more like a traditional, rock song. Like the rhythm, yeah, the drums, the guitaring. It's not just all long sustains and notes being held, right? It is much more
Yeah,
traditional
true, true.
sounding in that way,
And I love the guitaring in the beginning,
right?
like that. It's so good.
That riff. It's
Yeah,
like you're listening to like a rock song, which is gonna be like it's like the beginning of one of those
it's
rock
a
songs,
good,
um,
but
pop
like
rock.
this song is like a good, but it's one of those. I mean, we've done it actually. One of the, you know, uh, driving through Scotland or Wales or something, and listening to this, and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, it's got
Hmm.
a lot of. By the end, I mean, it gets so much power with the drums, and hitting them hard, like
Yeah,
it's crazy the way the song sort of
yeah.
and yeah, this is like a
Hmm.
very a very standard rock song, how it sort of transitions itself.
Yeah, in a strange way, right? I mean, I think it's definitely more uplifting, uh, and it's from the like previous three, and I think it's definitely
Hmm.
faster paced, like the tempo, right? And it does build up as well, but it's got a more standard like a rock pop song sort of tempo, and you've got a lot of build up, like the build, especially at like the 9 minute 28 second mark. I think the build up like leads to
Yeah,
this musical interlude where you have like that fast paced drumming, you've got the fast paced guitaring, and it's almost like a trance like part of the song where you're just like headbanging and just
yeah,
listening and
there's
enjoying the
so much
music,
power,
right?
like so much energy over there, like in the end of the song. And
Yeah. It's like at a
yeah,
music festival and you're jumping around and you got all the instruments and everything just getting to a climax.
if number 6 or number 7 like don't wake you up, number 8 will.
That is very true. This song is, you want to start your morning to this song
Yeah,
because it's just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, true.
it just uplifts you. It brings you to your high point,
And yeah,
right?
and also musically very very, I don't know, it's like the vocals again are so they're like sort of
Hmm.
screeching through. They're all falsettos again, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
going so high in their notes and like reaching that top point, and yeah, like a rock song.
like a rock
But
song. Yeah,
again, it's a falsetto, so it's like that's the
yeah,
combination. That's the
yeah. It's not
combination. Yeah,
normal singing. It is different.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's a very interesting experiment. This is like how Sigur Rós would do a pop rock song,
it's like hardcore.
right?
Like as we
It's very
progress into the
experimental
song,
in that
it the
nature.
more
Yeah.
hardcore rock it gets.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely
yeah,
agree. All the way to that climax at that
definitely.
9.5 minute mark. And I think then again, right towards the end, as the song ends, you've got that vinyl static sound, distortion,
Closing
whatever
the
you want to
bracket.
call it, the clicking, indicating the end of the album. Yeah, closing the bracket.
I
I
mean, it's
like that.
opening the bracket, closing the bracket. So that's how it goes.
But yeah,
Click, open,
yeah,
click, open.
yeah. Yeah, interestingly, like because all the titles have like nicknames, all the titles have brackets in them, right? Like if you go on Apple Music or whatever, because it's the name of the title bracket, right, and then bracket close. Um, but yeah, I guess summing this album up now, I guess all the tracks. Um, the one thing I could say is that if the purpose of art or the purpose of music is to like transport you into another world, then like that is exactly what Sigur Rós do with their music. It might not be your traditional, the song structures or words or singing or anything. But what it does, it's art because it's hard to put your finger on it, but it does transcend and it does transport you somewhere else. Like when you're listening to this music, you're not sitting where you're
It's
sitting,
I think we had this discussion
right?
when we went on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the date. 9th July is when we went for the Hyde Park Sigur Rós concert,
Oh,
and
oh yeah, 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 yeah,
it's what we discussed was that like the performance was so good, and the the tickets were free, and and like that's how we
yeah, yeah,
discussed, like this is how bands and performances should be. And even Sigur music is free to use. I mean, like you can like sign, you have to fill up a
yeah.
few little form and send it
Mm-hmm.
to them, and they'll communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And but
Yeah.
it's yeah, but it's free to
You
use
don't have to pay any
depending on your
fees.
project. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's actually how Untitled IV, as you mentioned, the Nothing, it's called the Nothing song because it's the chicane song, which is the Nothing song,
Yeah.
which he inspired from Untitled IV. Yeah, so
Ah.
that's why it's called Nothing song. Yeah,
Ah.
and
I
it's the
didn't know
same
that. Yeah,
tune,
yeah, yeah. Nothing
same
song
thing.
as
It
well.
but the chicane makes
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Like
yeah, pretty
Poppypola,
much. Yeah,
Hoppypola.
so Nothing song
Yeah.
is exactly that. It's the
Yeah.
hoppy pola of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's very interesting. It's like open source music in a sense of like being able to take or have music in this way where people can take it and change it without having to necessarily
Go through
like
so much paperwork. Yeah,
you know, get a mechanical license and all those crazy things that you need to get generally. But yeah, it's very much, I think the musical statement and everything is just so different from what you get from traditional music. Their whole approach and the sound, right? And I guess the naming convention in this case, it's all just, it's not, yeah, it's very different, very unique. But I think it all adds to this sort of ambience and this
yeah,
environment that they create.
yeah.
It's all part of the art. Like, it's not just a song, the title, the album, the booklet you get when you order the album. It's all part of that art.
It is, and it's all. I mean,
Right.
now that we've put, like, I have been able to put this into words. Um, so the first four songs are like, as you mentioned, or like the right way to put it would be uplifting, and the next four
Yeah.
tracks are empowering. So like, and as you mentioning
Yeah.
that you were hearing English, which was like you sigh alone and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what
Yeah. Yeah.
that for me also. That I thought that he's singing that, but he's not. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's that feeling is there in the songs, that if you don't have to be sad,
Mm-hmm.
don't be alone, be strong, be, and then
Yeah.
it sort of is
Yeah.
pushing you to you know uh
Mm-hmm.
just
Do it! Just do it!
True. Yeah. 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 No. It's and I guess another word you could use. Some of it is it is in a sense inspiring. Like you feel there's like there's certain types of music you listen to or certain things you can watch or look at, and it sort of inspires you to be creative or try and do something and make something. And I think a lot of these tracks in this album, they sort of have that inspirational feeling
yeah,
to it, right? Without necessarily having a message in the sense of like lyrics or someone like telling you in a song you should be doing something. It's all just the music and the ambience and the feeling that's been conveyed. But yeah, I guess that sort of wraps it up. The closing bracket on the brackets, and yeah, we will see you guys next time with something very
hopefully.
interesting.
Yeah. See you guys.